Welcome back, girls, gays, and theys, to another episode of Can't Think Straight. I'm Sadie Weiss, your host, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today. This is a very special episode, one that is of the utmost importance to the queer community. Today, we're going to talk about queer sex ed. We'll hear a crash course from Kennedy, learn about contraceptives, share some coming out stories, ask people around campus about their experiences with queer sex ed, and travel to Oasis to hear about the work that they do for our community and chat about consent. Sex education is something that is even more important for queer youth to have access to in times of federal education funding cuts, queer erasure, and oppression. According to a USA Today study, less than 8.2% of students in the United States have access to LGBTQIA+ inclusive sex education. Far too many LGBTQ youth are attending schools that lack inclusive policies and sitting in classrooms where their teachers and textbooks significantly fail to address their identities, community, and experiences. Nowhere is this absence more clear and potentially more damaging than in sex education, says the report, citing a number of other analyses. So that's why today is going to be all about gay sex. Gia, hit us with those headlines.
Hey everyone, my name is Gia. As always, these are your headlines. According to NBC, the Supreme Court on Wednesday, February 26th, appeared likely to allow a woman from Ohio to pursue a claim against officials suing for being discriminated against at work because she is straight. Now, while discrimination at any level should be widely condemned, it is notable to search for discrepancies behind what claims our current Supreme Court seems to be validating. In 2023 and 2024 alone, there were a multitude of workplace discrimination cases brought to the Supreme Court by LGBTQ members that involved both DEI and the Free Exercise Clause. But we simply don't see those cases making national news headlines as the Ohio woman's case did. Activists across the nation have spoken out against the recent case, claiming sexual orientation discrimination as a blatant example of hypocrisy. The court's ruling could lower the bar, at least in some parts of the country, for people belonging to majority groups to bring so-called reverse discrimination claims to light. I'd like to reiterate here that the issue on the table is not the sexuality of the Ohio resident, but rather the fact that in the wake of Trump, we are seeing a rise in many court cases like this that lower the time, energy, and funding put into cases that have legitimately harmed those in oppressed minorities. Tactics of discrimination that homophobes have utilized for decades to dehumanize minorities are now being reversed and used to gain even more traction for their hateful agendas. Trump isn't just content with furthering his hate here in America, though, because we are seeing sweeps across the globe attempting to minimize the voices of our LGBTQ community. In Russia this week, the LGBTQ+ community is facing increasing persecution as President Vladimir Putin intensifies his stance against sexual minorities. New restrictive laws and a Supreme Court ruling declaring the international LGBT movement as an illegal extremist organization have forced many LGBTQ individuals to retreat into hiding. Looking in on this from the outside, it is heartbreaking to watch the world bend to the will of these fearmongers. And I know I share the empathy and love of many when I say that the advocacy spoken for here encompasses not just our fellow LGBTQ Americans, but all those oppressed across the globe. In congruence with our topic of today's episode, I'd like to recognize the immense importance of organizations like Planned Parenthood in ensuring equitable healthcare access for everyone, particularly within our LGBTQ community. For many of us, Planned Parenthood offers crucial services like hormone therapy, sexual health screenings, and education on reproductive rights. These services are especially vital for transgender and non-binary individuals who may face barriers in accessing gender-affirming care elsewhere. During Donald Trump's last presidency, his administration pursued a series of policies that targeted Planned Parenthood, aiming to limit its ability to provide comprehensive reproductive health care. In order to fight back against this, Alexis McGill Johnson, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood USA, said that, quote, President Trump is kicking off his second term exactly as anticipated, attacking sexual and reproductive health care and disrupting the delivery of health services in areas of the world that are most in need. Further, she says, quote, Planned Parenthood will do everything we can to protect sexual and reproductive health and rights in the USA and around the world. Both here in America and abroad, the voices of many are still fighting the fight, and so are we. Hug your loved ones and remember that there are always people rooting for you. especially your favorite team here at Can't Think Straight.
Insightful as always, Gia. Thank you. Let's see what Kennedy has planned for us today in Crash Course.
Hey gang, welcome back to the third episode of Crash Course. I'm your host, Kennedy Madron, and today we're talking all about sex. Okay, so not like that. Get your head out of the gutter. Jeez. It's no secret that schools have been teaching heteronormative view of sexual health practices since, sex ed has been a thing. And let's face it, many schools have taught this idea of abstinence, which, if you are unfamiliar, is when schools only talk about how scary sex is and that you need to avoid it at all cost, like sex is the plague or something to be ashamed of. So thankfully, as a society, we have evolved, and more schools are teaching sex ed from a comprehensive point of view, which discusses sex in a more positive light and is supposed to be more inclusive. But sex education varies widely across the United States, leaving many young people, a part of the LGBTQIA community, in the dark about how to practice safe sex. And this lack of education can lead to harmful sexual diseases and misinformation. So let's dive in and talk about sex education and the importance of creating an inclusive environment for all. As we've discussed, sex education often assumes all students are heterosexual and non-transgender, and many curriculums never mention anything about gender or sexual orientation. Again, creating confusion for those who are part of the queer community hoping to gain insights about themselves. And it doesn't help that only 22 states have legally mandated sexual health classes, only 12 states are required to teach about contraception, and only 7 states are required to teach medically accurate information. By these statistics, we recognize that many students are left in the dark about their bodies and sexuality, and more students are recognizing their identity but lack the information to remain sexually safe. Now let's focus on the LGBTQ+ community right quick. As we have discussed, the queer community has been disproportionately affected by sexual health classes, and this leads to rather negative outcomes. According to Hannah Slater, a researcher on queer sexual health, she claims that young men who have sex with men who may identify as gay or bisexual, accounting for more than 2/3 of new HIV infections among people ages 13 to 29. Young women in high school who identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual are more likely to contract STI and more likely to become pregnant than those who identify as heterosexual or questioning. And among transgender people, HIV prevalence rates are more than 4 times the national average. And transgender women of color are particularly affected. Transgender and gender nonconforming youth also experience high rates of sexual violence, particularly transgender and gender nonconforming youth of color. These stats are very humbling and show how a lack of comprehensive and inclusive sexual health courses can have major negative effects on minority communities. A national survey recorded that 93% of parents think comprehensive sex education is important, and 73% think that sexual orientation is an appropriate topic to discuss during this class. And many organizations, such as the Department of Health and Human Services, are working around the clock to provide clear and diverse sexual health information to those in need. It is becoming more prevalent in our society how important accurate sexual health and education is to our youth, as it can aid in keeping students and adults safe from sexual diseases and harm. And I believe as a society, we should not hide from the topic of sex as if it's taboo. We are adults perfectly capable of talking about sex. It is a natural part of humanity that needs to be discussed with the goal of keeping our teens and adults happy, healthy, and safe. So please, let's strive to have important conversations where we don't leave anyone feeling excluded. We are all human, living human lives. Well, that's all I have for this week, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Crash Course.
Thank you, Kennedy. That was so eye-opening, per usual. Story time, lore drop. Let's hear some coming out stories.
Hey everyone, it's me, Sadie.
And Kennedy.
Today we are here to talk to you all about our coming out stories. Yay! I came out in 7th grade. That was fun for my parents.
Right.
I was sitting down at dinner with my parents, and the reason I told them was because there was this girl that I really liked. And she liked me back.
Aww.
And my first love. Shout out. I'm not going to say your name, but shout out. I decided to come out to them. In retrospect, I could have just not, and we could have just been best friends and like had bestie sleepovers and like wouldn't have been that deep. But anyway, my parents were like, OMG. Because the times then was like, your kid is saying they're gay. There's a lot of photographic evidence that I will...
Do you have the plaid pants?
I'll put here for reference. pause for inserts. Yeah, there are a lot of pictures, like backwards hats. Like
Backwards
I was
hats,
wearing the tank
headband
tops,
phase.
chains, like
Headband phase. Ponytail every day.
Yep. I was the first student at the school to come out, which was like, I relished in that.
You little trailblazer.
I was like, yeah, of course I'm. Yeah, I was like that overly political middle schooler. Mm-hmm. That was gay. I came out as pansexual though. The pansexual to lesbian pipeline is like really, really real. And I attribute that a lot to like het comp. Mm-hmm. That was like, I guess the beginning of my journey was when I came out. And then that's when I had my first girlfriend. And that's what I consider my first lesbian heartbreak. I won't even lie. Like that was
Ooh,
tough.
I hear that one's tough.
It was really tough. So yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Okay, your turn.
My turn. So I had like a similar kind of upbringing. I was very religious, grew up in a religious household, and I went to a private school, and it was very religious, and there were very homophobic things that would be, said, which sucks when you're growing up and you're realizing, hey, I'm queer, and growing up, I had an amazing family. I love my parents, and they knew that the closet was glass. Throughout my childhood, they would basically say, whoever you love, as long as they treat you right, we don't care. And like throughout my childhood. So I always knew like I would be safe with them, but it was going to school because this specific school, when I went actually from preschool to high school. So all my life, same people I grew up with. And in preschool, they had a document that my parents had to sign that said, your kid will not partake in homosexual activity.
In preschool?
Mm-hmm. It was heavily suppressed for me. Like, I think I always knew I was gay or queer or like to some degree. It's just that, like, being a kid, you don't know what to call it, especially being in a heavily sheltered environment. It's like, what is this that I'm feeling? Because, like, I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling, but I know that it's different because I don't see it in representation at all. So it's like, then you have this shame around it, and you're like, I'm different. Oh, my gosh. So, and I even say when people are just genuinely curious about it, they're like, when did you know you were gay? And I was like, probably when I was 5. Because that's when I had my first crush, and it was, my little best friend. And then, the guilt and shame kind of comes with that. And then in middle school, there's even more around that because middle school teenagers, they can be mean.
And I don't know if this was for you, but in middle school we started gym. Mm-hmm. And like would change into our PE clothes in the locker rooms.
Yes.
And that brought a whole new kind of
right
feeling of shame or like weirdness or just like, I don't know, like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I would just kind of like stare at the wall because I'm like, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable or anything like that.
Exactly.
And I was like just battling with myself. And then I remember like 9th grade, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely queer. I don't know, I'm just gonna explore that, but I don't know how to in such a sheltered space where if I even ask questions about it, there could be confrontation that could limit my ability to get this great education. So I just kind of had to do it on my own and just really reflect. And at the time I was also really religious, and so my relationship with God, I was like, why did God make me this way? If this way is supposed to be sinful, and if sin is a choice, why can I not choose this? And so then that created this whole deconstruction era. So then I started getting close with a friend of mine because we were both in theater, because I was also a little theater kid. And she says to me that she's bi, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another one amongst the midst. And so like I'm there and we're just kind of talking, and then I'm like, yeah, I think I'm like queer. And she's like, well, I know you're not alone. There's like a lot of us here. And I'm like, shut up, really? And so then I meet them all, and we end up being just this close queer friend group, and we're still friends to this day. What I will say is that going from such a sheltered environment to like App State, just saying that, yeah, I'm queer, to other people or that I have a partner or like a girlfriend, they're like, okay. And I'm like, that's so cool.
Everyone's gay here.
Right, everybody's so gay here.
And still I'm single.
Your little self would be really proud of the
Yeah.
of the person you've turned into.
Yeah, like they'd be like, that's a really cool person.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, facts, girl. Like, yeah, we're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Sadie and
Kennedy's coming out stories.
yeah, and also Stevie joined us. And this is her coming out story. She likes to be in my closet a lot. She loves my closet. Right. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that this has been illuminating or, I don't know, entertaining at least.
Entertaining,
Enlightening, yeah, whatever it may be. And oh yeah, I think the most important thing to know is like coming out is such an individual experience for every single queer person. It does not have to look the same. It doesn't even have to occur. Like you don't have to come out. Like that's
Right.
not like every person's coming out story looks so wildly different. And I think that that's something that should not only be celebrated, but also that we should make an effort to, you know, proliferate that those expectations aren't there. Like no one's expecting you to come out in a certain way or
Right.
do things in a certain way. And that's the best part of the LGBTQ community is that like you're not.
You're not in the traditional normative of what society is giving
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So there is a huge queer community around you. And honestly, thank God that we have the internet and such like a,
yeah.
it can be damaging, but it can also be very connecting, especially for queer people, I think, to feel less alone. I think
yeah. Like AO3, look at all those fanfics out there.
yeah. Yeah, and they're being printed into books now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
It's always nice to look at how far I've come in finding my voice since I first uttered the words, "I'm gay," out loud. Now, travel with us to Oasis, Boone's private, nonprofit organization which serves survivors of sexual and domestic violence, and talk about consent.
So my name is Kelly Bass. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the prevention outreach manager here for Oasis, which means I just kind of have an overhead look at all of the outreach, education, and fundraising efforts that Oasis does. And Oasis actually is an acronym. It stands for Opposing Abuse with Service, Information, and Shelter Incorporated. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve survivors of intimate partner violence and sexual violence in the high country. People that identify as male, trans, non-binary folks experience this type of violence as well. And we do more than just shelter. We'll help folks if they are looking for a protection order against their unsafe person, or if they are at the hospital as a result of like an assault or something of the sort.
Continuing in what Oasis is doing, whether it kind of be not necessarily teaching, but just having like resources where people can, you know, find those like safe educational outlets in some form or fashion. I think that's really important.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go on to Consent 101.
Yeah.
So what kind of education on consent do you think is important, especially for those who, like we said, are lacking that sex education?
Yeah. And so a lot of my experience in doing sex education or consent education would be with 7th and 8th grade students. And the conversation, if you start any conversation out with a 12-year-old student about sex, they're going to clam up, they're going to get wigged out, they don't want to talk to you. Who is
Right.
this strange woman talking to me about sex? So normally we start the conversation off with, let's talk about, you're not going to go in somebody's book bag and take something without their permission, right? You shouldn't touch people's hair without their permission. You shouldn't hug people without their permission,
Right.
Right? And then we talk about, well, what if that's my friend, right? So then there's a conversation to be had. That's another reason that we frame this in the way that we do, because a lot of the students that we're talking to, some of them aren't even interested in dating yet. They're not interested in being sexual at all or kissing people. That's not what they're into yet.
Yeah.
So we definitely try to frame it more of like the lifestyle sense, and then of course we end up going into the other topics as folks are comfortable. But yeah, it's especially helpful that the consent lesson is sandwiched between the boundary lesson beforehand, right? So you can set your own boundaries,
Right.
even if it's not sexual. Like, no, you cannot borrow my pencil because the last time I gave you one, you lost it. Or
Yeah.
threw it away, something of that sort. And then behind it comes the sexual harassment lesson, right? Why do we care?
Right.
Why should we care that somebody's being sexually harassed? Because it's not cool. And then
Right.
we talk about bullying. It's a great curriculum.
That is awesome.
Thanks.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
So what does consent mean for sexual relationships and let's just say like day-to-day life? Like what does that mean?
Absolutely. So there's a really great acronym that Planned Parenthood really made famous, and I like to use it in my work. So it's FRIES, right? Freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So that's kind of like a 5-point checkbox that you need to make sure that you have full consent for everything. And consenting for one action does not mean that I've consented to others, right? So there's different levels of consent, and you need to ask before new actions are taken, and you also need to ask every time, right? Consent is not inherent in a relationship, even a situationship, right? We need to make sure that we're engaging in consent practices every time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, in school we're taught, math and like reading and writing, but like we don't always get to talk about how to take care of ourselves. And I feel like having like a place like Oasis to help with all people from all walks of life to find that help and to get educated on how they can help themselves. I feel like that is so important.
And I know I didn't directly address the LGBTQ section. So all of our services are available to folks of all identities. We also serve folks who do not speak English. We have 3 Spanish-speaking staff members, and sometimes there's intersectionality between people's identities. Well, there a lot of the times. So yeah, all of our services are free and confidential. They're available in Spanish. We absolutely welcome anybody that is queer, gay, trans, non-binary. We obviously have lots of gay things around. So definitely want people to feel welcome.
Yeah.
We try to introduce ourselves with our pronouns, and just make it a safe space for folks, for sure.
It definitely is.
While there are no specialized programs, we encourage folks to access all of the resources.
Which I think is great.
Absolutely.
Because it just is like welcoming, like no matter what. How can the community better support Oasis in their mission?
A lot of our grant funding is restricted, meaning that it can only pay for salaries or hotel stays or we can't even buy soda for our clients, right? Very specific on what types of things we can spend money on. So whenever the community donates to us, that's what we call unrestricted funds. We can do with that money what we want. So for example, if a client comes to us and says, I'm ready to leave my abuser, my unsafe person, my car's in the shop, I need $1,500 to get it out. The unrestricted funds allows us to do that for that client, where a grant would not allow us to do that. And that is what that person is experiencing as a barrier to leaving.
Right.
So that is kind of the importance of the community support, not only engaging in trainings and doing our fundraising events, and hanging the flyers and wearing the t-shirts and being cool on social media and all that, but also putting their money where their mouth is if they're able to, right?
Yeah.
And folks who are able to donate money, we encourage them to donate what we call in-kind items. So we have a donation closet downstairs that anybody, not only our clients, but anybody in the community can come to us and get any toiletry you can think of. We have lots of clients who are going into their first apartments for the first time, so we offer furniture for them, with cleaning supplies. We've got a box of sheets downstairs,
Yeah.
So if folks can't give monetarily, we encourage them to do a donation drive of sorts.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.
And we'll see you into the next segment, I guess.
Time to learn all about contraceptives. Yay, safe sex!
Welcome back, Snacks. Today we're going to talk about contraceptives. Now keep in mind, we are 2 average college students, so we don't know exactly all to know about contraceptives, but we're going to learn with you today and share a little bit of what we do know. I am Logan,
And I'm Madison.
and let's dive in, shall we?
Alrighty, first we have birth control pills. They're taken daily, 91 to 99% effective with typical use, and they do require a prescription. They can help regulate your periods and reduce acne. There's also lots of sketchy side effects.
Really?
The side effect sheets are huge. You should look at them. They're
As a
crazy.
man, I know absolutely nothing, actually. Up next, what we have are condoms. These protect both against pregnancy and STDs. Male condoms are about 85% effective within a typical use, and female condoms are about 79% effective within the typical use. And they are not needed to be prescribed. You can just go and get those. Usually they are free, especially in places with a lot of young adults like colleges.
Next we have IUDs, or intrauterine devices. The long-term ones last 3 to 12 years, and they're inserted right into the uterus. There's hormonal and non-hormonal options, such as a copper IUD, and they are about 99% effective. Currently the most effective non-invasive form of birth control. They're pretty cool. If you've looked up copper IUDs, it's pretty interesting how they work.
Up next, we have contraceptive implants, also known as Nexplanon. They are inserted under the skin of the arm and last about 3 years, and they're over 99% effective. I don't know much about these, but you did show me the TikTok about how they go way up there.
It looks scary.
It does look a little scary.
It looks like that one scene from the Hunger Games when they get their tracking devices.
Yes.
Next up is the contraceptive shot, or Depo-Provera. It's taken every 3 months and 94% effective with typical use.
And also up next, what we have is the vaginal ring, also known as the Nuva ring. They are inserted for about 3 weeks and removed for 1 week, and they are about 90 to 91% effective within the typical use.
And this 3 weeks on, 1 week off thing is rooted in some religious context.
Emergency contraception, which is known as Plan B, copper IUDs, and Ella. They are used after unprotected sex, and they are used to prevent pregnancy. They are most effective when taken as soon as possible. So this is in a situation where you feel the need to do that, and when in doubt, you should go and get that worked out.
Yeah. But also read the packaging, because there's some weird stipulations with Plan B. There's certain weight, height requirements, time limits, those sort of things. So know what you're taking and know when you're taking it. Mm-hmm. And that was our knowledge on contraceptives. We hope you learned something new. Bye.
How educational. I definitely learned something. It's time to explore campus and ask people about their experiences, or lack thereof, with queer sex ed.
Hey guys, it's Sadie
And Ariana.
and right now we are in the Clemens Student Union and we're going to go around and ask people about their experiences with queer sex ed. Let's go. Did you have a good experience with sex education in high school?
I was homeschooled, but sex education was taught when I was around 12, and then again when I was 16 in my biology classes.
It was mostly like use a condom or just be abstinent. And they showed us a picture of both the things, so yeah.
We got no sex education, at least I did not.
I learned about it in my health class, but like, that was really it. It was just that.
My parents didn't even sign off to let me learn about it, so I didn't get any sex education. I don't think it would have hurt if I had a class about it.
Sex education for me, I went to a Christian private school, so we really went middle school, 7th grade, split the boys and girls up. Girls, here's what happens. Guys, here's what happens. And they didn't tell us anything but abstinence. And nothing about birth control or anything like that was mentioned, unfortunately. Nothing really taught except these are the organs. There you go.
I would say it was mainly focused just around straight people, or like the sexual experience between just a cis man and cis woman, and there was no focus on any sort of female contraceptives like IUDs, implants, or anything like that. It was only focused really around condoms, not even female condoms, and really no mention of sexually transmitted diseases either. It was very limited, I would say.
I actually learned a lot. They taught us everything from finger condoms, dental dams. They showed us how to use a condom, told us everything about every STD, STI, you can get everything.
And did you have access to queer sex education?
No, not at all, because my curriculum was technically under a Christian institution with my teaching, so there was no such thing as queer sex education.
There was clubs, but I don't think there was an actual thing dedicated for the school.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think we had any access to that, no.
No.
How do you think queer sex education would have helped you now?
I think it just would have broadened my understanding of how humans function in general, and just being more aware and informed of how sex education can be accessed to all people.
As someone who discovered they are bisexual in college would have helped me a lot. First instances of having relations with people who were not men was interesting. It would have definitely helped if more representation was shown.
And why do you think queer sex education is so important?
It's so important because it opens up the perspective of different attractions, and I feel like when it opens up those different attractions and talks about different sexual orientations, you open up people to a lot of different things in their life.
Queer people exist all around us, and they are, just as important to be talked about, and their sexual experience is just as valid as anyone else's, and sexual intercourse between a man and woman is not the only thing that exists, and just being able to talk about the experiences and what happens to people of all sexual orientation is just as important as for a cis man and woman.
As always, I'm your host, Sadie Weiss, and we'll see you next episode on Can't Think Straight.
Maybe Quinn?
Love.
Do we like that?
Their name is
Did I
Quinn.
eat?
That's it.
Okay.
8 boots.
This is Quinn.